Can you guys see that? You can hear me too? All right. Good sound. All right.
What's up, Kyle?
What's going on?
Not a lot, man. How are you?
I'm well. You want me to wait till you give me the okay to start?
Yeah, I'll kind of introduce you, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay.
I'm not sure how many people are on right now. About 15. I think the link was, for some reason, it said like I had another meeting started, like wouldn't let me start the meeting. So I hope that doesn't affect how many people come. All right, guys. So this is Kyle Harris. He's of Bob Harris School of Baseball School of what's the full title, Kyle? It's Baseball and Softball School, right?
Bob Harris Baseball School. Yeah, it's nothing creative.
So I have the most creative name out of everybody. Just my last name in baseball, right? It's zero creativity, so I can relate. Yeah, so Kyle's a good friend of mine. He's really smart in this. He's got a master's in applied exercise science and some really cool educational background. He's also pretty shredded himself. So I wanted to kind of have him go into some of the things that he works with his athletes on, as well as, what he's practiced before. I know you got another background specific to this, and that I'll kind of let you share, because I'm going to butcher it. So I'm going to mute myself now. I'm going to turn it over to you. We'll go from there. Excited to have you, Kyle. Thanks, man.
First, I want to thank Ryan for letting me do this and talk about something that I'm very passionate about. And I apologize if I talk fast, because I want to get through this. It's something that's very near and dear to me. As you mentioned, I have my master's. One of my masters is in exercise science with a focus on sports nutrition and performance enhancement. And basically my background was I was kind of pudgy growing up. I got to college, was pudgy, and I just learned through diet and training that I could really increase performance. And I was completely hooked after that. And I spent a long time, about a decade, in the performance and supplement industry as a rep for a couple companies, and I competed in some bodybuilding during that time. But that's enough about me. I just wanted to touch on first principles of nutrition to start off with, because that's basically what we have to do to keep our bodies alive and able to do day-to-day things. And you can see their list. I'm not going to read everything on the PowerPoint, but when you think about things like the RDA, those are recommendations to prevent disease. And as an athlete, we need to do more than that. We need to supply our body with things that are going to fuel us cognitively. Number one, that's very important, is glucose is how our brain works. So we need that. It's going to fuel our physical performance, and it's needed for recovery. And then everybody likes to eat. So finding the foods that are going to fuel your cognition, fuel your performance, recover, that you will enjoy eating, is extremely important. Because somebody can give you a diet all day long, but if it's foods that you don't enjoy, you're not going to follow that. So it's going to take a little bit of trial and error to find out what works for you as far as foods go. But I want you to keep that point in mind, because it's very important. I'm very basic with my diet. I mean, I can pretty much live off of chicken, sweet potatoes, broccoli, rice, and almonds. But I know most people aren't like that. So, and find stuff that you can enjoy. And I wanted to really hammer home that point on fueling cognition, because everything starts in the brain, and learning is movement based. So it's really, really important for us to understand that symbiotic relationship and how food actually does help us. It's why schools will provide kids with breakfast on the day of state examinations, because some kids come to school, they don't eat. So by getting them some glucose in their body, their brains actually work better. And if your brain's working better, you're definitely going to perform better, especially in a sport like baseball that's very focus driven, very reaction driven. And you need to have a combination of visual motor and spatial temporal skills. That's really going to be beneficial if you're fueled the right way. So those of you that play travel ball, it's extremely important to kind of have that locked down with your nutrition leading up to the tournament, through the tournament, and after the tournament then for recovery. And then with performance nutrition, I listed the number one goal as optimizing recovery, because if we're not recovered, we're not going to be able to perform the next day. And that's extremely important. We need to be able to fuel our bodies with enough energy to sustain performance. And in order to do that, we have to recover. So making sure you're eating enough to recover, that's the number one. That's the number one goal that we have. And then number two is fueling performance. We want our nutrition to increase performance. We don't want to eat too much prior to an event and then that have us feel sluggish, but we also don't want to eat at a time that's going to make us so we're hungry during that event. If you go back to something like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, hunger is a physical need. So if your body is hungry, you're not going to be able to focus on the task at hand. So you need to be fueled for that performance. And then the third is improved performance. And as you get older and you get into more elite levels of training and more elite levels of competition, there's going to be ways that you can optimize performance through your nutrition. The fourth one is long-term body mass management, which is really hard for young kids, middle school and high school kids, because when we're growing and our bodies are growing longitudinally with our bones getting longer, it's hard to put on mass for some. Some of us have different endocrine makeups where maybe we do put on too much body mass that we don't want. It's not lean body mass. And then later we're going to have to go back and kind of address that. So that's a fourth one, is we want to manage lean body mass, because there are actually a lot of studies. Ben Brewster did one in his book that's really, really good about how an increase in lean body mass, not overall mass, lean body mass can increase performance. And his was specifically done with pitchers, but my guess is that if we did that with hitters or position players, you're going to see an increase in performance as well. Because if we increase lean body mass, we have more contractile tissue in the body, and we're going to be able to apply more force to whatever it is that we're trying to do athletically. And then that's all based on caloric balance. So your goal determines what your calories should be. And as an athlete, we really need to start thinking about calories as units of energy. And that's really all they are. We need to fuel our performance. If we're going to burn 1,000 calories playing in a doubleheader, we need to be able to have that much in our tank, and we need to be able to refuel that when we're done so we're ready to go. So knowing how to balance energy in versus energy out is extremely important. And as I mentioned before, that's very goal dependent. So just to give you a quick story on my background, when I was a freshman in college and I was overweight, when I came home between my freshman and sophomore year, I knew I needed to lose weight. So that was a very tricky thing for me, because I was playing in two summer leagues. One was a wooden bat league that traveled, and one was just a local league that I'd play at nights when I was home. And I was working a little bit, doing camps, and I was training. So I had to really get smart with my nutrition, because I needed to be at a negative calorie balance to lose weight, but I still needed to provide my body with enough energy and fuel so I could have energy to perform at a high level, and I could still recover from the workouts I was doing. So that can be a really hard thing to balance for some kids. So, and here's the nutritional hierarchy, or the pyramid of nutrient priorities. And I'm not even going to talk about meal timing or supplements, and I'm rarely going to get into micronutrition. So we're going to focus a lot on calories and macronutrients. So calories are the most important thing. We want to make sure we're getting the right amount of calories for our nutritional goals and our performance needs. And then here's just some information real quick. It seems like it's simple. Sometimes I take it for granted, so I wanted to put it on there. But if you need to lose weight, you need to eat fewer calories than you can burn. It's that simple, especially for young people that are probably 35 and younger. If you need to gain weight, you need to eat more calories than you can burn. And that can be really hard. I hear people say all the time, I've been a teacher for 17 years. I've taught kindergarten all the way through seniors in high school. And I always hear parents say that, oh, my kid eats all the time. And really, if you would take a couple of days to just write down what they're eating, they're probably not eating as many calories as you think they are. So if you need to gain weight, you need to double down on your focus and your intent on tracking what's going into your body. And then thirdly, weight management. If you're right where you need to be, that's when you want your calories to eat calories in to be the exact same as the calories out. And over here, I have a caloric maintenance formula, and this is really good to know. It's very important for each athlete to figure this out. These are the calories you need to maintain your weight. So for a 185-pound athlete that trains 6 hours per week, they need about 3,000 calories. And the reason this is so important is because you can take that maintenance calories, you can use that formula to figure out what your maintenance is. And then from your goals, whether it's weight loss or weight gain, then you can add calories or take calories away according to that. But it does take some tracking. And if you're on this call, I assume that you have the diligence to go out there and start to implement these nutritional strategies into your daily routine to increase performance and recovery so you can get to the next level. Macronutrients, these are the major nutrients we eat. These are the things that have calories. So if you think of carbohydrates, this is your main source of fuel. This is where you get energy for cognition or thinking or focusing. And this is what fuels most physical performance. And each gram of carbohydrate has 4 calories in it. So when somebody says they ate 30 grams of carbohydrates, they're getting 120 calories from carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are simply, they're sugars. There's a whole lot of them. There's simple sugars, there's complex sugars, there's starches, there's fiber, but this is the brunt of your diet. This is where probably the majority of your calories should come from. And it should be a mixture of things like whole grains, fruits, vegetables, starches, beans, and it should be a mixture of simple and complex. And those that need to eat a lot more calories, like if you have to eat 5,000 calories, simple carbohydrates are fine. As long as you're getting the nutrients from things like fruits and vegetables and you're getting all of those nutrients you need to meet the RDA and maybe slightly above, simple carbohydrates are fine because they sit lightly in your stomach and they're not going to fill you up or bloat you. So things like white rice may be beneficial to people trying to gain weight. Even things, parents scoff at me when I say this, but your kid might need to eat things like Pop-Tarts because they're just so calorically dense. If you need to gain weight and you hammer 2 Pop-Tarts, that's about 500 calories. So if your goal is 3,500 calories, you're 1/7 of the way there just with those 2 Pop-Tarts. Protein also has 4 calories per gram, and this is extremely important for things like body processes, maintenance, recovery, and it's really important for protein synthesis in the body, which helps us to build and maintain muscle mass. So if you're trying to build muscle, you need to have your protein locked down. So that's extremely important. And then fat is also important because it helps with endocrine functions. It helps to protect organs. It assists in the body to develop and utilize neurotransmitters that help us respond and feel good, body processes, recoveries. And fat is extremely dense in calories. It has more than 2 times the amount of calories per gram as carbohydrates and protein. So if you're one of those people that needs to eat a lot of calories, adding fat to your diet is an easy way to do that. I know some power lifters that when they're trying to gain weight, they'll just literally dump olive oil on stuff because 1 tablespoon of olive oil has 14 grams of fat, which is over 120 calories. So that's a really easy way to add things. And olive oil actually is a form of healthy protein or a healthy fat. So it can be beneficial to your long-term health as well. Now, steps in determining your calories and macros. This is something that, if you're on your phone or iPad, I would screenshot this. And maybe I can just share this screen with Ryan, but this is just steps on, I'm not going to go too much into this, but this is steps on determining calories. It's according to your need. And the first step, as I talked about, is determining your maintenance calories per day. And then the second thing is determining your goal, and then determining your protein requirements, fat requirements, and then after that, everything else can be filled in with calories. And you can see there's a range there between fat calories and if you like carbohydrate-rich foods, then you can lower your fat calories and you can increase carbs. If you're like me and you like fattier foods, then you can lower your your carb intake and you can increase it with fattier foods like natural nut butters, almonds, cashews, walnuts, things of that nature. Here's an example for a 200-pound athlete. His goal is weight gain, and you can see down here that 3,700 calories per day. That's where I would start him if he really wanted to gain weight. And here's the amount of protein, fat, and carbohydrates that he would need to eat in the day to reach that goal. This is another thing that you might want to screenshot just to see, because I think these numbers get misconstrued when people think about how much they need to eat. And this is a really good example of looking at something and seeing it right in front of you and being like, wow, I really need to increase what I'm putting into my body. With protein, I just wanted to address that more is not always better. in the perfect world and optimal in nutrition nirvana, we're going to have protein about every 3.5 to 5 hours, because that allows us to take advantage of a refractory period where protein synthesis actually drops and then spikes up higher. So we have greater amounts of protein synthesis, which is going to help us to build the most amount of muscle and to recover better. I know that's not always perfect, but these are some examples that I would do: 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal, 3 to 5 meals a day. And an easy way to do that is just to make sure you're consuming 30 to 40 grams of protein before and after your workout. If you do that, if you consume that 90 minutes before your workout, and then you eat within an hour after your workout, you're gonna be getting 60 to 80 grams of protein there in a window that's going to be more beneficial to help the recovery process and to build muscle and get the body ready for training the next day or the next 48 hours or the next competition. I'm going to skip micronutrients. These are things like vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and phytonutrients. The important thing here is making sure you're getting enough. And I like to, especially when you're playing in softball tournaments or baseball tournaments or double headers or game after game after game after game without a break, it's very important to have some foods into your diet that are going to help with anti-inflammation. Things like fatty fish, whole grains, nuts, green leafy vegetables like broccoli and kale, olive oil, berries like raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, cherries. Think rich, dark fruits and vegetables. Hydration. I know there's a lot of things out there you can find on make sure you drink this much water, make sure you drink that much water. It's really a personal thing. I'm a big drinker, so I drink tons of water, probably a couple gallons a day. It's very easy for me. But just be smart with hydration. Make sure you're drinking before, during, and after all physical activities, and try to drink throughout the day as often as possible. Here's a sample breakdown, and this is another diagram or example that's kind of eye-opening with all that food. All of that food right there equals about 3,700 calories. Now, me personally, I could probably slam this very easily in one day, but there's a lot of kids that have a hard time with that. So just take a look at that, and you can plug numbers in the way you need to, or rather plug foods in the way you need to. And using something like MyFitnessPal or Fat Secret or Calorie King to track your food could be a game changer for you in this realm. I think that's it. There's some information on me. If you need to contact me, there's my email, both of my emails. I'm active on Twitter. That's a really good way to get a hold of me. I'm usually pretty responsive on that. So I know that I went over, but if anybody has any questions, I can answer those before we get started on strength and mobility stuff.
Tanner too, I think Ed answered it back in the thing, but Tanner wanted to go back to the weight management formula. You just want to touch on that really quick, although I think it got answered in the chat as well.
Okay. The weight management formula, as far as he wants to see the, I'm not going to be able to go back. Let me find it. Yeah, basically it's your body weight. And then you multiply your body weight by 10 plus the number of hours that you train weekly. So if you lift 4 hours a week and you hit and throw 4 hours a week, that would be 8. So it would be 10 plus 8, which would be 18 times your body weight. And that would give you your maintenance to start with. And then you can adjust up and down from there.
Okay, awesome, man. Guys, too, I'm going to have, I've got this PDF. I've created a PDF for this file, and I'll make sure it gets shared not only on that link on our website where you guys can go back and watch that stuff, but also in the Slack channel too. Kyle, do you have time? Were you planning on doing your strength and mobility and jumping right off, or do you have a little bit more time? Can we shift into Mike really quick? And then
yeah, I got some time. Yeah, okay, I know cool. He's there. I was gonna watch his presentation anyway, so.
Okay, perfect. So what we'll do is we'll transition into Mike real quick. So Mike Reinold, he's got a tremendous background. Mike, I'm gonna butcher it if I try to list all the things that you're really good at and all the cool things that you've done and all the cool rings you have.
Nate got that game. It's so bad.
Whoa. All right, let's make sure we mute ourselves if we're not talking. Kyle, can you make me the host again real quick? If you're still there.
Yeah, I'm here. How do I do that? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Where do I go to do that?
So it should be in the three dots on my. Should be the three dots where it says should say make host. If you're in gallery view.
Okay, let me get to gallery. Okay. There you go. I'm sorry. My apologies.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, I just wanted you to be able to share your screen. All right, so Mike. Anyways, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself. And what Mike's going to talk about is basically how to stay healthy, how to stay prepared. I've got some questions too, depending on what you guys ask and what else kind of comes up. So we'll kind of guide the conversation that way.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Good. You heard me? Good. Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for having me, Ryan, and thanks everybody. Just, quick background, why you want to maybe listen to me, I guess. I currently work with Ryan with the White Sox. I'm the senior medical advisor, kind of helping them rebuild their performance department. In the past, I've been head athletic trainer, physical therapist with the Boston Red Sox. I've done some consulting with the Cubs. You get a lot of Chicago people on here, Ryan. Is it a local thing? Yeah. So done some work with the Cubs. Obviously, I worked with Theo for a while with the Red Sox. So have some connections with you guys. But I've done a bunch of that, but I also have a facility like Ryan that is outside in the Boston area where we work with a lot of youth, high school, collegiate, pro guys in the winter, trying to get ready for the season. Baseball, softball, a little bit of everything. So it's pretty neat. I help Northeastern University's baseball team as well up in Boston, but more importantly, because I see there's a lot of softball players in here, I'm also my town's 10U youth softball coach right now. So pretty sweet resume right there for that, but it's been fun. But Ryan and I we were talking about like, hey, what's the best thing to talk about right now? And I thought what I would do is kind of share some of the experiences of what we're doing with our pro guys with the White Sox, as well as all the collegiate guys we work with. Everybody in the Boston area, but a bunch of other schools out there, like D1 schools around the country. We help advise some of those kids and kind of like tell them what we're advising everybody do right now, right? Because we're all in this like holding pattern, right? And I just did an interview with somebody for USA Today earlier today, and the article is about, how unprecedented this situation is and how in the middle of spring training, in the middle of high school baseball, in the middle of college baseball, all of a sudden everything stops. And the question is what do you do? Because if we just go home, sit on our couch, watch Netflix, play Call of Duty, and then all of a sudden we get a phone call that the season starts in a couple of weeks, I think we're going to be in trouble. We're going to certainly not be able to play at our best, right? But we're also going to potentially increase our injury risk because we're not keeping our bodies primed and ready to go. So what Ryan and I kind of talked about is kind of share what we're doing, right? So, at the high school level in Massachusetts, probably the same with you guys in the Chicago area, we didn't even get to our season, right? Because our season started in April. It probably would have started about a week ago or so. So we didn't even get to it. But we had all of our guys, they trained all winter and then stopped. They were throwing bullpens. They were, ready to go. Our hitters were, live BP. Everybody was hot, ready to roll. And then it kind of stopped. Collegiate, they were mid-season again. The pros were in spring training, so they're all a little bit different. But the concept that we're trying to do with everybody right now is we're holding out hope that there's going to be some sort of baseball this year. And really everywhere, so they haven't officially canceled things like summer leagues, like Cape League. Here's my Chatham hat. They haven't officially canceled any of those yet. I know a lot of people are probably going to still want to do things like showcases and tournaments with their travel team. So that way you can get some exposure because, life still needs to go on and the college coaches need to see you and all those things. So I thought what we do is we kind of talk about what we're doing. And essentially, in a nutshell, what we tried to do for our pitchers and our hitters is we tried to say, let's sit down and let's draft out what your normal workload would have been at this point in the season. So let's talk pitching a little bit. I know we have a lot of hitters too, but pitching's pretty quick and pretty easy to kind of talk about. For most of our people right now, they would be mid-season right now. So what we're trying to tell them is during the course of the week, I want you to perform all your in-season strength and conditioning like you normally would. I want you to perform all your in-season arm care just like you normally would. And then what I want you to do is I want you to throw every day. But here's the thing. I need 3 work days. And that's what we tried to kind of emulate based on what they would do. So I want you to simulate a start. I want you to simulate a bullpen, or the relievers, they might, have, 2-3 outings that they simulate on their own through long toss, and if they have access to a mound or anything like that. But here's the key, and this is the big thing with baseball that I try to tell everybody. Your body, from a physical standpoint, doesn't care if you're throwing off a mound or on the ground. It doesn't care if you're throwing 60 feet or 300 feet. It doesn't care about any of that. It just cares about stress. So what we currently do right now is we have a lot of our players. I mean, I have big leaguers that work with me that are literally throwing a ball against their garage in their backyard right now to stay in shape. But we're scripting out how to do that. And you all know the amount of effort it takes to make a pitch, or to make a long toss, or throw across the infield if you're shortstop, or outfield kind of, trying to throw somebody out at the plate, right? You know what those feel like. We need to be able to simulate that, and it doesn't matter how far you are. So we have everybody just about 75 feet from a wall, if that's all they have, and they're throwing it at the density. They're estimating 90 feet. They're estimating 20 with an arc. They're estimating pull downs or flat grounds or whatever it may be. But remember, your body doesn't really care. So believe it or not, that's going to be effective at keeping the workload up on your arm. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not going to make you a better pitcher, right? You're still going to probably need to work on your skill at some point. But I think what we're going to have happen is we're all going to get a phone call one day. Something's going to happen. And we're going to say, boom, we have 3 weeks. Are you ready? And our key right now is we got to keep hot. We have to keep our tissue ready, our bodies ready. And then in those 3 weeks, we're ready. We can work on skill. We can jump back on the mound with our coaches because the facilities are opening back up and stuff like that. We can work on our command. We can work on our secondary stuff, those types of things. Does that make sense? So the big thing for me is you got to be ready for that, because if you just kind of sit around and play catch every now and then, but you don't really focus on it, all of a sudden you are going to spike your workload, and that's why we're going to have some injuries. If you look at a lot of sports injuries, especially youth sports injuries, most of the injuries tend to occur in the first half or the early half of the season, because people spike their workload so much before they can get into a groove. So that's the big thing we're trying to be careful of with our pitchers. For our hitters, believe it or not, it's the same thing. So I wonder if you guys know, I know this isn't kind of interactive, but I want you to think in your head. I want you to think to yourself, do you know what the 2 top injuries in Major League Baseball are? Okay, taking away the pitcher's arm. So taking away shoulder, elbow, and pitchers. But what are the top 2 injuries in baseball? And by the way, this is in every level. We just have the statistics with the epidemiology in the pros. Ready? You got them in your head? Ready? It's oblique injuries and hamstring strains. Those are the 2 big ones. So why do you get those 2? Well, one, obliques, we're hitting way too much, right? You guys hit so much, and everybody's trying to hit with max effort and launch angle and all this stuff so much. And that's okay that you do that, but the same concept as the throwing workloads come into play. If you prepped yourself all winter to get ready for this point in the year with your swings, right? And you're getting in the cage, you're getting your tee work in, you're doing everything you need to do. And then all of a sudden, boom, you take a month off, and then you jump back in and just hop up on the tee, or you hop up on with some practice with your team. You are going to run into a situation where your obliques aren't ready for that stress. Okay. So that's a big one. The other one with hamstring strains is because we don't run enough. Specifically, we don't sprint enough. And that's a big one in baseball. Baseball's not a big, sprint sport, right? The pitchers I used to work with back in the day, I remember this probably isn't unique, but if you guys remember, I'm probably showing my age, but if you guys remember David Wells, so Boomer, he's stud, perfect game, World Series winner. I mean, great guy, right? He used to always say, I'm not running today, Mike. I'm like, why not, Boomer? And he's like, well, I don't run the ball to the plate. I throw it to the plate. I'm like, I can't really argue with that. That's actually a good point, right? So baseball is not a big running sport. But what happens is, the reason why we have so many hamstring strains is, you've been in there in the past, right? You ever been in a slump for a week, 10 days, you're barely getting hits, you're kind of just rolling over the ball, you're popping it up. You could go a whole week without sprinting. And then all of a sudden you have a weird pitch, you kind of slap at it. It's like an outside pitch and you got to sprint out of the box and try to beat that out. You step awkwardly at first base because you didn't time it just right and you strain that hamstring, right? It's the same thing. And it's because you haven't prepared your body to sprint because you're not sprinting enough. So what we're telling everybody is this for the hitters, okay? We need you to keep swinging. And again, I don't care where you're swinging. If you can only take dry swings in your basement, it's better than nothing, right? If you can get a net in your basement, that's great too. But it doesn't matter if you're seeing live pitching, if you're getting flips, or if you're just doing basic tee work. As long as you're giving some stress to the obliques, that's going to be very helpful when you get back into the game, right? And you get back into skill work. And then the same thing with running. You should get out there, right? You should get outside and try to get, like, you don't have to do a ton, but literally try to get like up to 5 max effort sprints twice a week. That's really it. That's all you really need to do. You can now, warm up, get yourself ready for that in your program. But if you just focus on that, that's going to keep your body hot. And then when you get to the skill training time, you're going to be good to go. Okay. So that's kind of the concepts that Ryan and I talked about. Like, and I think that's going to be the most impactful thing for you. Like, look, I'm not going to come on here and Zoom and teach you something brand new for the first time that you've never done before, right? Keep going with what you're doing. You're supposed to be mid-season right now, right? Keep going with what you're doing, but you got to say, like, what workloads do I need to get up? So for throwers, how do I keep my arm workload up? How do I simulate that stress? For hitters, what do I do for rotary power type things with my obliques and running with sprints? You have to keep those in mind. That makes sense? For the other people, I told Ryan, I sent them a link. We have a website, one of the websites that I have, in addition to my main site at MikeReinold.com, is it's one called EliteBaseballPerformance.com. We started this a bunch of years ago now, but there's a bunch of cool articles on there. But we have our free basic arm care program on there. And I sent the link to Ryan. Maybe he can send it out afterwards. But I'm not talking about like exciting, cool things that you're going to see like on Instagram. I'm talking about the basics of keeping your rotator cuff and your scap strong. And trust me, that's the stuff that all the big leaguers still do 3-4 times a week, whatever they may do. That's what I call the cake. You got to bake that cake before you worry about the frosting with some of the fancy stuff. So if you don't have something, or if you're having a hard time throwing, right, or you don't have a partner or bad conditions or whatever it may be, I think in Boston, by the way, so I'm up in Boston, I just got a message on my Apple Watch that our stay-at-home orders are getting worse and worse. Now they're saying we have to all wear masks just every time we're out in public. But if you're having trouble getting outside, you try to simulate that as much as you can. And if you can't, at least do this arm care program that you can download. That makes sense? So Ryan, I mean, at this point, anything you got for me or you want me to talk about, or if not, I'm also happy to take any questions that people may have. It's kind of up to you guys.
Yeah, I kind of want to let some other people ask some questions. This would be a great opportunity to unmute yourself if you guys have something. Like I said, the mute button's not to keep you guys from talking. It's to keep the background noise and stuff from going on. One thing I want to touch on really quick, just so I don't forget, is if you guys remember the workout, the very first sitting workout that we did, it was like sets of 5. So and you'll see some of the stuff that I posted about, I think the next KPI is going to be workload and controlling workload. And, at the pro level, we're trying to work with our strength coaches and guys like Mike to control that rotational workload, but also at the same time, maintain it from the injury perspective. But when he says things like we swing way too much, you can be very, very productive to build your swing muscles without actually having to do that. And that's where the movement prep comes into play. That's where some of the other stuff comes into play. You don't need to be in a cage. I mean, the amount of swings that are actually taken are way, way too much, even in probably a typical youth practice, especially from a motor learning and patterning perspective. Like, it just becomes activity and not productive. So that's really the only thing that I have to say on that side of things. But I will agree, you got to keep your workload up from that. So I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm saying from a drill perspective and maintaining activity versus being productive. So anyways, I know there's somebody else Jeff, you were pretty excited to hang out with Mike and hear from him. I don't know if you brought some questions with you. I know we talked before.
Yeah, Mike, I'm a physical therapist in Connecticut.
Oh, what's up, Jeff?
How's it going? I love the IGTVs you do. I think you have a great perspective of PT because obviously a recent grad of PT school, it can go anywhere, all the information out there. I think you do a great job keeping it in perspective.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Just a couple questions I think that might benefit some of these people in the chat when they go back and watch it too. I know band work, you mentioned band work, people are doing their stuff. How many days a week would you recommend they do that right now?
So I'd say with band work, to me, band work isn't a ton of strengthening. It's not a long-term strengthening type process. I use band work every day as a warm-up before we throw. I think if you're doing bands for reps, it's too much. You're actually kind of doing too much. You're gonna fatigue out the shoulder and do too much. So with band work, I keep it set based, just 2-3 sets of 10, whatever it may be, and probably get that in as a warm up before they do their throwing. So say you're throwing now, you have 3 big work days a week, you're doing your throwing, at least get them in on those days. Theoretically, you could probably do them every day, but I think sometimes people overdo them. But I don't do bands to fatigue. I don't do sets of like 20 or 30 seconds in there, because that's not the way the shoulder functions. The shoulder is going to get tired, and then when you go throw, it's tired, and that's the last thing we want. So with the bands, I think that's more prep work. To be honest with you, I think if you haven't done much for arm care programs, I really think you should go download that program and do the dumbbell based ones, because then you can go up over time, right? Like you're in the gym, you guys are working out. I see you guys. I see Noah. I see Stone. I like that name, Stone. You guys are munching away on your fruit right now, getting ready to get after it in the gym. I like it. Like if you guys were in the gym doing like a lunge or doing like a deadlift or a squat, would you use bands? Right? No, you use some weight to kind of get it stronger. The bands don't give you enough strength in my mind. So use some like dumbbell based things. And the good thing with arm care stuff, especially since hopefully this is only, a short, several week period that we're in here, is that you just need 3, 4, 5 pounds, right? You can find some things around the house that weigh that much if you don't have like a dumbbell that weight. So to answer your question, Jeff, I would like people to get their arm care program in 3 times a week right now. I think that would be key. Tubing, I don't think is enough, to be honest with you. I think you can do tubing as a warm up every day, but I'd like to see some other stuff a few times a week to get strong too, right?
I think that's one of the things that people, it's not really strength work when you're doing the bands. People rush through them, they do them quick. It's kind of like a lower level activation stuff. So it makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's better than nothing. Don't get me wrong. They're fantastic, but I think that's, you got to do both.
Hey, Mike, can you recommend a few hamstring flexibility or maintenance exercises / workouts? I'm assuming this is injury prevention, Bill. This question is coming from Bill Lurk.
Yeah. So would you say from Bill Ryan? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
What's up, Bill? To be honest with you, again, it's kind of what I was getting at before. More so than necessarily flexibility or strength or something like that. The best thing you can do to get your hamstrings conditioned and ready for a baseball season is to sprint. Believe it or not, sprint is the best exercise for a hamstring. As you get your knee out, you start to extend as you run. That's a lot of eccentric stress at that end range of motion. So you get a lot of good hamstring right there. So in a nutshell, I'd say obviously, do that. But other than that, the things that we really focus on the most are probably like single leg RDLs and then Nordic hamstrings. So put that into YouTube. There's a million of them, but Nordic, like NORDIC, Nordic hamstrings. If you work on those focus on the eccentric aspect of hamstrings, and that is how a lot of people get hurt.
Ty's got a great question. When we do our sprints, how long should we do these?
Yes, that is a really good question. So remember I said, just in terms of reps, like you should do, let's say we were going for a sprint session right now. What you'd want to do is you get a little blood flow, maybe do some conditioning. If you get access to a stationary bike or something like that, you could do that first, do some jogs, kind of get some blood flow. And then when you're feeling pretty good, we do some of our buildups of our sprints. When I say all I want is 5 sprints, that means I want 5 max effort sprints. But you had several jogs and kind of run progressions to get to that point. When you get to the end, that's like 5 sprints for me. What do we do that for? Well, it's baseball, right? So if you think about it, like the big thing I want to work on is acceleration out of the box, or, in one of your positions or something like that, to try to get that explosive sprint power out of you. But then I want to also accelerate through the bag. So if I were you, I'd go 90 feet. Right. I think that's what you're shooting for in terms of like what you're trying to get for distance for baseball.
Awesome. I have a question about sprints. If you're going to program, okay, so these guys want to maintain so they don't get injured. What about the guys that are, wanting to build speed and they want to, let's say they have a hill by their house and they want to go up the hill and down the hill. How would you program speed development with just that tool? How would you balance going up and down the hill?
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. If I'm going to guess, just based on the population of people on here, is, like younger people, youth, high school, maybe even some collegiate stuff like that, what's probably going to help them the most is probably uphill and trying to get that speed going uphill, because it also develops a good amount of strength, right? And when people talk about sprint, everyone just thinks it's like running really fast, but if you're strong and if you're powerful, you're going to sprint better. So what do you do? Like, well, you need basic strength and conditioning to just get your legs strong. Then you need to do some power drills, like even just like plyos, some jumps, those types of drills. And then you go into the sprints. And then uphill for that situation, I think, is probably what I'd lean towards if you're trying to do some sprint work right now, is really driving down through the ground so you can push down on that sprint. And then when you get off the hill, you're going to feel, 10 times faster.
Awesome. What kind of volume do you recommend for sprinting during this period of time, assuming there's no games?
For sprints, is that what you said? Yeah. So same thing. I do 2 sessions a week, 5 max effort sprints. I honestly think that's all you need. I actually talked to some high level collegiate track strength and conditioning coaches, so not our world, right? We're baseball. It's like the least aerobic sport in the world, right? So we talking to those track guys, they said when they get in season, they just do max sprints once a week. And I'm pretty sure like even like rugby, like soccer, other like international sports that do a lot of running, they just do once a week. So I'd say now for you guys, just because we're not playing twice a week, but when you get in season, you should do sprints. If you happen to notice like, oh crap, I haven't gotten a hit in a week and a half and I'm barely running, then you might want to add in a session of sprints in season too in the future, just, pregame, just to try to get your body a little bit more accustomed to that.
Okay, cool. If anybody else has any more questions, definitely feel free. I think we probably have time for maybe 1 or 2 more. Well, you guys kind of type those in or unmute yourselves to ask them. One quick point I want to make about the throwing stuff. So, a lot of things I've been hearing, why, nobody can play catch with me. I'm literally by myself, or I don't have a net, or I can't throw into this. I don't know if you guys ever heard this story about Jose Altuve, who might not be the best guy to talk about in 2020, but when he was kind of coming up, he literally took batting practice with 1 baseball. So he'd have to hit the baseball and then go get it and then come back and do it again. So it depends on, kind of goes down to how ambitious you are and how to kind of be your own coach and how to kind of lead yourself. We talked about that yesterday in the leadership stuff. Like where there's a will, there's a way. But the other thing, Mike, really quick, I guess, since it doesn't sound like anybody else has any more questions, there's a lot of stuff kind of on the internet and maybe by some of these guys, youth coaches, and we're taking a little bit different step of the kind of different ideology at the pro level. But a lot of these youth coaches I'm seeing on the internet are saying basically like, you better look out, because if you don't work harder than, your neighbor's going to, get this much faster than you, this much better than you. And there's definitely an opportunity to kind of maintain, but, I think in my perspective, I'd be curious to hear yours. It doesn't have to be the same as mine. Like our goal here should be stay healthy, stay safe, and maintain what we have so that we're ready to be where we were when the season came. And if we can gain a little bit, that's great, but we don't need to put all this extra stress or extra added pressure on ourselves. Especially at a young age, trying to be in panic mode,
Right.
trying to keep up with our competition, so to speak.
Yeah. I want to know who that guy's neighbors are, right? That's all around him trying to get better. I honestly, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, Ryan. I'm treating this like in season right now. So I think if you switched gears and went back to off-season training and you are like trying to set a PR in your deadlift or trying to like throw a medicine ball as hard as you can through the wall all freaking day while you're hitting, then I think you are grossly going to overload yourself when we get back into this, if we get back into this. Now, at some point, if we get the phone call and it's the opposite and it says, hey guys, no baseball this summer, probably nothing fall ball, whatever, then yeah, we're going to call an audible and pivot a little bit. And we're going to figure out like how to get them ready for their next competitive season, whenever that may be. Is it summer? Is it fall? Is it next spring? I don't know. But for right now, we're on a hold, right? And we're expecting to play at some point in the next, 2 months at some point. So we're treating it like in season. And you know what? For a lot of kids, this is going to be a blessing in disguise. Because, this is very sincere, right? I'm a physical therapist. I do a lot of baseball injuries. Like I make money off Tommy John injuries, right? So it's very sincere when I say I want to reduce injuries, right? And we're not having injuries right now because kids aren't overloading. So it's fantastic. We're in a good spot right now. This may be a blessing in disguise that somebody that was beaten up on their elbow or needed a little bit more of a break. And this is going to give them that little downturn that most people don't get. Most kids mid high school, they don't get a couple of months where they get to deload and kind of take a step back. So I'm not doing it like that, Ryan. I think if you're trying to beat your neighbor right now, then I think you're running the risk of overloading. You got to simulate the stress of in season right now, and hopefully in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks we're back playing baseball.
Awesome. And then with that being said, obviously, maintaining, when we do get that call, making sure you stay ready, but not trying to kill yourself, treating it like in season, just as kind of a confirmation for that.
Yeah.
Awesome, Mike. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time. I guess if you had, maybe a 15-second kind of answer for this, I know there's a lot of variables. I'm sure you get this question all the time. And you're probably gonna, have hopefully a quick answer for it. I know there's really no quick answer for it, but I'm sure you've come up with one by now. What is the most important thing to do to keep your arm healthy?
To keep it healthy, that's okay. So to keep it healthy, that's actually a good question. I like that. Usually people say, like, what's the most important thing to be a good baseball player? Like, all right, do you have a weekend seminar that we can attend? Like, that's a long thing. So to keep your arm healthy, I think you got to remember this. This is the first thing we teach somebody when they start working with us at Champion up in Boston. When they come in, the first thing we tell them is we go, throwing a baseball is bad for you. Right? And then once you understand that, then everything we're about to talk about makes sense. It's okay that you do it. It's not a big deal, but just realize it's stressful and it puts a lot of stress on your body. So we have to develop something to take back that stress. So we know things that, like with your arm, that each time you make a pitch, it's at max effort almost like every time. So what you end up getting is you get tight and you get tired from pitching. Those are the two big things. So how do you keep your arm healthy? Every time you pick up a ball, I want you to look like you, right? That makes sense. So Ella, Owen, Stone, Ty, all you people, I only see a few people with the videos on. Noah over there, I think Noah's playing Fortnite right now. But right, I'm looking at you, Noah. If you think about that, when you throw and you get tight or you get tired and you go pick up a ball next time, then you're not ready to throw. So we have a philosophy: is every time you pick up a ball, I want you to look like Noah. Right? So if you're tight and you're tired from that last game, you don't look like Noah. You didn't do enough to get ready for that next game. So we do things like self-myofascial release if you don't have somebody like me to work with, right? Do some foam rolling, do some lacrosse ball on the back of your shoulder, but get your strength up with like your in-season shoulder program. Those are the types of things you got to do to stay healthy with that arm. So I know that wasn't 15 seconds, but that was pretty condensed. I don't know if I can do it any shorter than that.
No, yeah, that was awesome. That was awesome. And I think too, and maybe I don't mean to keep you on longer, but if we have, periodization, especially for youth athletes, a lot of times they're told to just like completely shut down. And then when they pick up the ball, it's like their travel teams want them to start playing long toss day one, because that's part of their throwing program, and they haven't done anything for 3 months.
Right.
So knowing kind of the periods that you're in, and there's kind of this maintenance period, there's kind of this deload downtime period, but does that mean do nothing, or does that mean just do a little bit less than what you do in season? What's your take?
I think it depends on the time of the year and what we have on the calendar. But to be honest with you, we do recommend do nothing quite a bit. So, but there's multiple ways to do this. But this is what I know. This is one of the most damaging things that we can do. We've done so many studies in the last 20 years, like real scientific research studies in the last 20 years on why people get hurt. And we're trying to blame everything. We tried to blame the split finger in the 80s. We tried to blame the curveball in the 90s. Tried to blame inverted W in the early 2000s, right? Like all these like things that we tried to do. And don't get me wrong, those things are all stressful in different ways to do it. But there's only one thing that continuously correlates to injury, and it's overuse. And that's it. And so that's a gigantic word though. What does overuse mean? But how about this for statistic, Ryan? And I think this is the big one to kind of think with your head. If you pitch for more than 8 months out of a year, you are 5 times more likely to get hurt. And by the way, 5 times is gigantic. That's 500%. If your stock portfolio could go 500%, you'd be really happy, right? 5 times more likely to get hurt if you pitch for more than 8 months out of the year. So what we tend to do is most of our pitchers, like our good pitchers, they don't pitch in fall ball anymore. if you were even playing fall ball. Fall ball's kind of like fading a little bit, but we don't let our pitchers pitch in fall ball anymore. Even at the collegiate level, we're really minimizing fall ball and kind of getting something out of it. So there, depending on your schedule, yes, there are times you may shut down, but then you also need a nice ramp up. If your travel team on day one has you long toss because that's their program, you should probably look at some of your competing travel ball teams in your area. That answer?
Yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, I just want to kind of hit on the ramp up for sure, but all the other context obviously goes into that.
Of course.
Makes the ramp up important. So, Mike, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. And I'll post that link not only in Slack, but I'll also post it on our website with all the recordings and all of this, everything too. So if you have missed anything, Mike talking, this is being recorded right now. We'll throw it on the website Thursday, just like we have the other shows. So
awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Absolutely. You too, man. Thanks a lot.
Give me a social distance.
Yeah, I got a Corona elbow. Yeah.
Get me in there. I'll see you guys. Take care. Have a good one.
All right, Kyle, we'll go back to you. Whoops, had you on my screen here for a second. There you go. If you want to throw your video on, if you're still around.
Yep.
And we'll knock out a quick workout. So that was awesome. I mean, I think the biggest thing, as we get back into this, some of your travel coaches, as soon as this is done, might want you to jump right into practice right away, and being smart and having kind of being good at being your own coach, right? Being respectful, but kind of knowing what your body's ready. And as you guys get older, you guys will be able to kind of listen to your arm more. It might be tough if you don't have a lot of experience in being self-aware of how ready your arm is or how ready you plan to be. But now is going to be kind of a great time to kind of learn that and kind of just manage it as you guys get back. So hopefully there's enough content, enough people talking about it that there'll be a slight ramp-up period for the youth guys, and your coaches aren't going to have you in panic mode, ready to get out in the field. And the other thing to consider, too, if you don't pitch and you haven't thrown for a ton, or you haven't thrown a lot over the break, and all of a sudden you go play shortstop at practice and you take 100 ground balls and you're throwing it 100 times with, a shuffle across the infield as hard as you possibly can, like that's the same thing. Position players can have arm injuries too. If you've ever played shortstop or third base in practice, your arm can hang. So just make sure you guys are taking care of yourselves. I will post that later. If you guys have additional questions, make sure we talk about it in Slack. And I've got a challenge for the players too, that I'll post in Slack after this as well. Kyle, you're up, man. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. How much time do I have, Ryan?
As much time as you need at this point, as much time as you have time for. I want to be respectful of your time. If you're running low on time, if you want to show us kind of what you had planned, and then they can go back and do it. If you're good on time, then whatever, we're good. And if people need to jump off the call, they can. But typically at the end, what we've been trying to do is kind of let people hang out and having like our own little discussion about whatever else is going on, another question and answer, things like that.
Awesome. I just want to say Mike did a great job. Mike's awesome. I followed Mike for years. If you don't, I highly recommend doing that for the strength and recovery and all that stuff that he does. He's tremendous. Right now, what we're going to do here today is I'm basically assuming that you have no weights at home, no bands, nothing like that. You're at home with nothing. And the equipment that you need, you can see behind me here. I got a backpack with a couple of books, a dowel rod or a broomstick, a towel, some water bottles, and some lunch pails. And we can do a lot of stuff with that. I just want to talk about like what Mike said. Like he talked about staying consistent in this time and not trying to overreach. Just stay consistent so you're ready for your season. This is a great time to get into a routine for everybody, because I know I've harped on my kids. Let's get up, let's get our schoolwork done, let's get into a nice little routine and start doing things. And this period of time could be a blessing in disguise for your development as a player and a human being, because you can take this time to start to develop some things you can do at home 2, 3, 4 times a week that are going to have a compounding effect on your development. And that's really what we're looking for. Whether you're 20 years old or 10 years old is developing some good habits that are going to compound themselves. Because if you start now at 10, 12, 14, 15 years old, you're going to be ahead of the game when you're 20. So we're going to talk a little bit about how I like to build programming. And my basic premise is we always start on the floor with mobility work to wake the body up. Then we stand up and we do things in place. Then we go dynamic. And then we do our our movement and strength stuff. So we're going to kind of try to build it that way on the way out. And real quick before I start, I sent Ryan this out. You have the outline, right, Ryan, that I sent you?
Yeah, I posted in the chat earlier. If you guys go in the
Okay.
chat and scroll up, you guys will be able to follow along with that as well.
So I mean, I really try to keep it simple. I am big on trying to provide kids with a proprioceptively rich environment, but I keep it simple. We squat, we hinge, we push, we pull, we jump or land, and we do some kind of ISO work. And Mike talked about something that I really, really believe strongly in, and that's sprinting. If you guys can sprint twice a week, 4 to 5 all-out effort sprints, that's one of the greatest things you can do to build power and speed, especially when you're in that adolescence period of time. So I really highly recommend doing that. And it's not a volume thing. It's not how much you sprint. Now, you know, doing 30 sprints isn't going to be better than 10 in a week. That's something that really, really stood out to me when Mike said that. But we're going to get started. If you guys want to join in, you can. If not, you can take some notes. The first thing we're going to do is a lying pelvic tilt, because I think it's really important that we have control of our pelvis. And this is kind of how we learn how to do that. And to do that, and if you can't see me, holler at me. If you can't see my whole body, Ryan, please holler. But to do a pelvic tilt, we're going to lay down flat on the ground. Knees are going to be bent at 90 degrees. And if you arch up your low back, you'll see a little spot under my back here. And sometimes I'll put a wrist weight or I'll put a towel under there. And what we're trying to do is tilt the pelvis posteriorly so the whole back is flat. So the bottom of the buttocks and the back are completely touching the ground. If you poke on your stomach, you should feel those intrinsic core muscles extremely tight. And then we relax. We push down and we'll hold it for 2 to 3 seconds and then relax. Another cue I use is ribs up and then ribs down. And we're trying to basically get the rib cage closer to the front part of the pelvis. Up and down. And I'll talk about this later, but your pelvis is shaped in this fashion, and we're trying to tilt that. A lot of us are tilted anteriorly, so our pelvis is dumped forward. We're trying to roll that back the other way. Now, once you get to control that, you can progress the exercise to a march. And this is important because we want to not only be able to control the pelvis, but we want to be able to move from the pelvis. So we hold that pelvic tilt, so the intrinsic core muscles are tight, and then we march. Feet flat on the ground and then up. And it's important to try to keep the 90-degree bend at the knee and make sure we're not doing this, or we're not just bringing our knee to our chest. We actually want to get swing from the pelvis while maintaining the flexion in the knee. So that's the first thing we'll do. We'll do some kind of progression or regression from that. And then we'll move to a single leg glute bridge. So for a single leg glute bridge, we're going to be basically in the same position. We're going to start here, and we're just going to bring one leg up off the ground. And I like to cue the pelvic tilt, and then the heel that's on the ground, we're going to drive that into the floor. We're going to come up. And we're going to hold that for, our goal is 20 seconds eventually, but we'll go 10 to start. And you're right, whatever leg you're using, that buttock, that glute should be extremely tight, and your core should still be tight. You want to watch at the lower portion of the thoracic spine or the upper part of the low back, and you want to hold that there. Then we'll do the other leg. Pelvic tilt first. Try to hold on to that pelvic tilt as you come up. And this will engage the hamstrings, glutes, and the intrinsic core muscles that help to control the rib cage and the pelvis. Another way you can load that exercise is if you have loop bands at home, you can throw the loop bands around your knee, and you can actually perform them for reps. So we pelvic tilt, we're up, hold for 2 seconds, then back down. And by using a band around your knees, you're actually creating some more tension in the glutes, so you start to develop a little bit more endurance, a little bit more strength, a little bit more control of that. From there, I like to do fire hydrants with kids. So we'll get on all fours, quadruped position. And I want to keep that back flat. So we have to get that pelvic tilt in again. So we're going to bring the pelvic tilt in. The core should be tight. And then we're coming straight out this way. From the front, you want to watch to make sure they're not rotating the pelvis from the leg that's anchored into the ground. You'll get a lot of cheating that way. And you want to watch for cheating with an arched low back. So we've got to be able to make sure our intrinsic core muscles are nice and tight. If they're unable to do that, we regress the exercise to something called a clam. And to do clams, I like to lay with the arm on the ground, the head down so we're not straining the neck. We keep our heels together. And then we look for external rotation this way. And again, this is something you can overload with a loop band if you have a small loop band. I don't know, I think Amazon's out all that stuff. So good luck finding them if you don't have them. From there, we move to the thoracic spine, and we're going to do some rotations. I call these open books. Same thing. We're looking for the flat back. The core's engaged. We start behind our arm on the ground, and as we come up, we're trying to rotate up, and we want to have a straight line from the tip of our middle finger, try to get all the way down. What you'll see is this motion, we want to get here. And we actually do these. I'll do these with our young kids, and what I cue is, it's like you're trying to take that perfect selfie like your mom takes. You're trying to get that perfect angle right up here, follow with your head, just like that, to get that thoracic spine involved. And then we start to work on some opposition with that. So we're working on our pelvic stability and core strength, and we're also working on some opposition. So we're gonna come straight out with one arm and do a bird dog this way. And again, you'll see cheating up through here. So we want to be right through that position. Controlling the spine the entire time from the front. And then we'll roll over and we'll do the same thing on our back, which is called a dead bug. And this is where some weight might come into benefit for some kids. So if you have a cooler, you can throw some water bottles in there. We're going to be on the ground this way, arms up, and we're just going to work one leg at a time. Out, trying to keep the back completely flat on the ground. No arching up. You want to get that flat, hold the pelvic tilt, and back, hold the pelvic tilt, and back. Once they get that motion down, we're going to go opposite. And then another way you can progress that exercise is by using water bottles or weights or wrist weights or even ankle weights this way. So I know Ryan's talked about mobility, control of the pelvis, things like that with the swing. These are all things that are going to help aid in developing the control the body needs to control that area of the body. After that, we go prone on our stomach. And this is something that's really good for the shoulder blades and scapula because we do a lot of stuff that are closed chained. If we have the bands, that's more of a closed chained exercises. This is about developing some proprioception, some feel, and some control of the upper back and shoulder blades. So we're gonna lay down and we'll do some T's. And the idea is to feel the movement coming from the shoulder blade. So you can cue your players or your sons or daughters by placing your hands on their shoulder blades and making the movement come from the shoulder blades. And the water bottles can be used for resistance on that too. The next thing we do is we're gonna do either I's or Y's, and this is gonna be dependent on a kid's mobility of their lats. If they're tight and they can't get the arms up, a Y will be more beneficial. If they're really flexible, then they can work through an I position. And I'll just show you both. A Y is going to be and then the I is going to be straight overhead. And the last one we do there is something called a Serrano press that I really, really enjoy. I think this is a great one. This is one of my favorites. We'll be up here. We're going to engage the shoulder blades, and then we're going to press. And And you can check for things like scapular dyskinesis with this, because if you have your hand on their shoulder blades, you should be able to feel those shoulder blades as they're pressing up over their head. You should be able to feel them roll and move and separate. And if they're moving asymmetrically, or if there's a glitch and they're not rhythmic, then there's something that needs to be addressed with their shoulder blade and their ability to control that. All right, and then the last thing I like to do is weight the core up a little bit more. I know by this time most kids are fried, but we'll do a hollow body plank and we'll just hold it for 10 seconds because I like to see them protract the shoulder blades. So we get the hands behind the shoulders. We don't want them in front. We want the hands behind the shoulders. When we get up into this position on our toes, and if you come up, you can put your fist right on their sternum and kind of lift. And if they're flat, it'll lift them right into that position. And they should be able to hold that. I mean, really, our athletes should be able to hold this position for a minute, in my opinion, before we progress them to much else. And then that's our warm-up. That's our in-place warm-up. We'll get up then and we'll do some movement type things. And that's where the stick comes into play. So if you have a stick, let me move my screen a little bit. Go. What we'll do, the first thing we do is we do a hip hinge with the PVC pipe. So, just so you can see me move. We've been cueing athletes to spread their feet a little bit, get their heels into the ground, so their butt is behind their heel. Toes, their toes. You can see it lined up there. And then we try to spread the floor with our heels. So we're trying to basically kick our legs out this way and rip the floor apart. And then we flatten that back out so there's no space. And all the movement comes with the butt pushing backwards behind the heel. I like 2 to 3 second reps on the way down, 2 to 3 second reps on the way up. That's going to be a huge thing. We want to learn how to hip hinge the right way. And by pushing on the floor and out, that engages the backside and it keeps us stable so we're not rocking our knees. And hopefully it locks us in so we're not rounding the back or overarching the back as well. The next thing we'll do is a squat to warm up. We'll do a squat with rotation. So we're going to squat down. One hand's going to steer. We're going to open up, switch. Open up again, then back up. And back up. And we keep the reps on these at about 5 because most kids lose focus after that. We're looking for good quality movement, good quality reps. And there's a couple others. I'm going to skip through some. They're on there. If you guys have questions, you can let me know because I know I'm pushing on time. For our movement, we always do a bear crawl. We'll go laterally, forward, backward. But the thing we're looking for with our bear crawl is we're looking for basically an elevated quadruped position. So we're at 90 degrees here. We're at 90 degrees here. And we're at 90 degrees at the hip and the knee. So basically any place where we have a joint, we're at 90 degrees if possible. We raise the knees, and then we're looking for slow and controlled movements, trying to keep those 90 degrees. We'll go forward, we'll go side to side, and we'll go backward. And then for our advanced athletes, we'll put cones on their back, we'll put foam rollers on their back, something to really make sure that they're not moving. Because you'll get a lot of this, you'll get a lot of big steps, and you can just see the instability. And all of that movement prep we did on the ground that seems so boring is where they're starting to build the stability in order to bear crawl the right way. Then we'll move up to a multi-planar lunge. If we have space, we don't here. So if I had space at our facility, we might lunge all the way down and then reverse lunge all the way back. But since we don't, you're at your home, what you can do is a multi-planar lunge. So you lunge forward, you lunge 45, you lunge laterally, and then you would lunge backwards. And when you lunge backwards, the key is to make sure you're keeping the torso up and stable. You're not leaning in any weird direction. and you'll see them want to come this way. So it's instant feedback for the player. It's instant feedback for the coach's eyes to see them leaning forward, and you can clean that up right away. And it's a great way to warm the body up. And then we'll do a snap down. This is our landing portion. So our arms are straight up over our head. On cue by the coach, we'll snap down into athletic position just like we want them to land. And then we'll hold that landing position for 2 to 3 seconds. Once athletes get that down and they're pretty good, we'll progress that to a snap down into a lunge. And again, we'll hold that 2 to 3 seconds and watch for that forward lean. Once they can stabilize a snap down, then they're ready to do more advanced plyometric type exercises. I'm going to skip that, and then we'll get into our strength. So we've warmed up, we've done our movement, we've done all that, and we'll get into our strength where we're going to squat, hinge, push, pull, and do some kind of iso ab or a jump. And I know that we had somebody doing some weighted backpack, so today I thought we'd focus on single leg work. If you have a chair, you can do Bulgarian split squats. You're going to elevate that back leg. And the idea is to try to get a good view here. I'm sorry. Try to get into a position where that knee is going to stay behind the toe. And we want to keep that as the shin as vertical as possible. So our force is developing from the heel all the way through the posterior part of the front leg. And you can load this with a backpack on the front, on the back. If you have kettlebells, you can load it that way. And if you have trouble balancing, that's where your sit comes into play again. If you have an issue balancing, you can use this as a walker or a cane to help stabilize yourself. That's a great exercise to do because with hitting and with throwing, we've got to be able to stabilize that front leg on contact and control it. So developing strength on a single leg is extremely important. So if you're going to do your regular squats one day in the week, the next week you might want to do something single leg like a Bulgarian split squat. The next thing we'll do is a single leg RDL. And again, you can use the stick if you need to balance. And it's just basically learning to hinge, keeping the weight through the heel, pushing back this way. If you have a dumbbell, you can hold it in the opposite hand. So I'd have a dumbbell here, find my balance, come across. If you don't have a dumbbell and you want to load it, that's where the backpack comes into play. Throw your books or some water bottles in there. You can put it on the front of your body. Do the same thing, hug it, and then work through that hip hinge. You can throw it on the back of your body as well and work it more like a single leg good morning. I know you guys worked good mornings earlier in the week with a backpack. And then we'll get to our jump, which I'm going to use a lateral bound today. So when you're learning how to do lateral bound, we're looking for stability first. We're not exactly looking for how explosive you are, but we're looking for the ability to land and control it on each leg. So if the weight's getting on the ball of your foot, you're not going to be able to do that. You've got to have stability in through the heel and in through the butt, the glute. So we'll jump that way with our lateral bound. And then we'll go yoga push-ups today. Yoga push-ups are one of my favorite. We use them in part of our arm care and our strength training. And with a yoga push-up, we're going to be in that hollow body position that we planked in. We're going to do a push-up, and then we're going to push back so we can get a little bit more shoulder blade into the exercise. And if you have athletes that struggle doing push-ups, you can do a modified push-up into a yoga push-up simply by getting on your knees, pushing up, and then pushing into yoga push-up. And now, push into yoga push-up. And if that's still not an option because of mobility, strength, core stability, you can simply have them push back and then come to hollow body and hold it. Again, keep an eye on the shoulder blades. They should really feel those shoulder blades moving up and around the back part of the rib cage. And then it's hard to do back exercises, pulling pull-ups, unless you have a bar, bands, or a pull-up bar. So we're going to do isometric holds with a towel. So if you have a towel, put it around your feet, push, let your shoulder blades protract this way, and then slowly bring them back, and then hold each position for about 3 seconds, as hard as you can. And then you can use your feet pressing out against you as resistance. So I'll show you that again. We're all the way out. We're gonna let the shoulder blades wrap around so we can feel that. Back flat. We're gonna engage the shoulder blades, hold it for 3 seconds. Pull a little bit more. Hold it for 3 seconds. A little bit more. And then all the way in and hold that. And unfortunately, that's gonna be our best option if we don't have any bands or weights. And then lastly, since we already did a hollow body plank, we're gonna do a side plank, and we're gonna shoot for 10 seconds for the youth athletes, holding that for 10 seconds, and then moving on up to 20 to 30 seconds. In the side plank, we're here, tight on the oblique. Mike addressed that, the oblique injury, so this will be a great way to help condition that so we can handle more rotation, helps with the anti-rotation, so we can protect the backside that's not rotating actively as much if you're a righty hitter thrower or a lefty hitter thrower. If you need to cheat that, you can bring one leg out or you can go on your knees and hold it. And we want to make sure we're doing both sides equally there to address any kind of asymmetries. I know we went quick there. I apologize, but I wanted to get through all of that. Does anybody have any questions on that? Do you need me to do anything else there, Ryan?
Kyle, that was awesome. Thanks, man. That was phenomenal. All that was recorded as well. It's cool to see all the different strength guys kind of get creative in ways to generate resistance. You know, in this case, using you know, a towel or a t-shirt and different kind of holds and things like that. So that was really cool. Ty wants to know how many days a week can he do this?
I would do it 3 days a week. I think frequency is important. Well, how old are you, Ty?
Ty's 12.
12. Frequency is important. So if you do it 2-3 days a week, I know my daughter strength trains twice a week. She's the same age as you. So if you can do 2 days a week, and then if you're feeling froggy one week and you got some extra time, you do it 3 days a week, that'd be great. 2 to 3 sets. You know, I keep reps low for kids because I think there's an attention span there. I know when if I'm doing a squat, I know if I do 8 reps after about the 5th one, my form's probably not as good as the first 5. So if we can focus on doing quality reps between 5 and 8 reps, I think that's really, really good. Instead of doing 15 where 5 of them are good, 5 of them are okay, and the last 5 are just slopping through it, and we're not really getting a whole lot out of it. So 2 to 3 times a week, 2 to 3 sets, 5 to 8 reps for each exercise.
It's awesome. Ty's really froggy, so he can handle it.
Get after it, buddy.
But no, that's awesome. What would you say? Obviously, these guys have gotten then they're going to get a couple more strength coaches too. We've got Jeremy Frodden from UCF coming, Javon Shaw from Iowa State, and some other strength guys that are going to be on here. How would you have them? How would you recommend that they kind of plan their workouts? Like, if they're going to do one of these workouts 3 times a week, or should they do one workout on a Monday, one workout on Tuesday? Should they try to divide up maybe some of the speed workouts versus the isometric holds? Should they, or do, you know, maybe like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, kind of more strength, Tuesday, Thursday, more speed, and things like that? And
what age group are you referring to for this?
I guess just in general, you know, on how they can kind of break it up. And obviously you've talked about several things that a lot of the other, you know, not only hitting guys have talked about, but movement guys or strength guys have talked about. So just curious, like your take on how you would lay it out.
The movement stuff that I did at the beginning, the boring stuff that I call it, like you can do that every day. Like I wake up and do a lot of that stuff because I'm getting up there and, my back hurts sometimes. So I do that stuff and it really, really helps. So you can do that stuff 4, 5, 6 times a week. The strength stuff, we've talked about this with other strength that I've talked about with other strength athlete coaches. And I think if you talk to 5 strength guys, you're going to probably get 5 different answers unless they're working with elite athletes that are really honed in. If you're talking about speed and strength, I think it's great to separate them so we're not doing like super intense stuff on the same day, like too much. Like you go and you train really hard with weights and you sprint and you hit and you throw. Like that's way too much for the body to handle. You've got to break that up. I'm not saying you can't do most of that stuff every day, but there has to be a give and take on the intensity and the volume of all of that stuff. Like if you're sprinting one day and you're going to lift, like something like a single leg stuff that we did today might be more beneficial because you're going to have, it's going to be less intense. It's going to be less stressful on the nervous system as far as load goes. I'm a big fan of variety, especially for kids. Like the more we can throw at them, the more different situations we can put them in. I think the more they're going to learn about their body and the better they're going to move. But I also think that they all need to learn how to sprint, land, squat, and hinge the right way. So as long as they're doing those things, I think they could, hey, this workout looks fun today. I'm going to do this one. Nah, that was kind of boring. I'm going to do this one on Wednesday. I guess I really like that one for Monday. I'm going to do that on Friday. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's my assignment for you guys in Slack. This is a player assignment. I'd love to see you guys kind of create kind of your own workout based on everything that you've seen, the stuff that you like, the stuff that you feel like you can accomplish. Whether it's the same rep schemes that sorry if you guys can hear my daughter in the background, whether it's the same rep schemes that we put in there, or whether it's something that you kind of want to mix up. I'd love to see some athlete made workouts kind of and it could be stuff that you've done that hasn't been presented on either. It could be stuff that you've already been doing. But I'd like to see you guys kind of come up with something based on kind of the new information that you guys have seen and what you have access to. So everybody should look a little bit different. If you're the Heimbuck family and you guys have a whole life fitness center in your basement, you guys can do some different stuff. If you guys are like me and you guys have to do step ups on your couch, whatever else you do, or just an open space or open gym, you guys can get creative with that. So with that being said, that's kind of my assignment for you guys. If there's any other questions that you guys have, I would love to open it back up to Kyle. And then it's my turn for the devotional today.
Thank you, Coach.
Nothing for Kyle. All right. All right. So it's my turn for the devotional today. Couple things I kind of wanted to talk about. I don't have any specific Bible passages. I do have a Bible verse that I want to talk about. For me, any of you guys who kind of know me, I like things that make sense. Things really have to kind of come together to get me to buy in. I would like the data to make sense. I like just the concepts to make sense. But I know that, in this kind of realm, it doesn't always make sense. We talked on our Bible study last night that, God's understanding of the world is very different than our understanding. And so kind of recognizing that. And one thing that, I wear on my chest every day, is Philippians 4:13. And it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's on my chest every single day. I got this other cool 5-tool one as well. But, that's kind of something, for me in these challenging moments that, it's a very common verse. And kind of something we talked about yesterday was a lot of times for me, like on the faith side of things, I like to kind of put God in the back seat and kind of just say, oh, he'll take care of it. Like he's got it. And it's important that we build our relationship and we ask him for the things that we feel like we want. And we ask him, for things that, are important to us. And there's kind of this like assumption that, just because it says like, he'll take care of us and he'll do these things. If we take advantage of that, if we use, Christianity as kind of a get out of jail free card, it's not gonna pan out the way that we want on that side of things. So for me, I want today's challenge to be all about continuing your relationship with God. Kylie's there in the background, wanted to participate too. Trying to continue our relationship, like being very intentional and active in our relationship with God. Understanding that like we can do all things through Him. It might not be our plan. It might not be everything that we had set out to do. But as long as we're doing everything we can in our power to honor our time, treasures, and talents, kind of like Tom talked about yesterday, I think it's going to work out in our favor. And our Bible study yesterday was all about faith. The whole premise is faith through uncertainty. And it doesn't always have to make sense. We have to understand that God's timing and God's understanding and God's perspective is very, very different than ours. And I think that's where the faith comes in, is if we expect everything to make sense and everything to be perfect, we're going to have doubts and we're not going to understand. And so some of that faith comes into not necessarily not questioning, because I think it's, I think it is okay to question, and that's kind of what prayer is for, and having that conversation in relationships. But I guess my challenge today, and part of my devotional that I want to touch on, was I think we can all be better, more intentional about how we have a relationship with God, versus just kind of assuming He's there and using Him as kind of a get out of jail free card, and also saying like thank you for all the things that we have. If there's definitely tough times that people are going through. Families are going through financial struggles. Businesses are going through financial struggles. People are dying. People are dying alone. People are losing their family members, knowing that, they can't talk to them. They're having to text them and FaceTime them like goodbyes. They it's like really sad stuff going on right now. And for us, like we've had a meal on the table every night, and, we've got clothes on our back. Like we've got heat, we've got shelter. We're all together as a family. And while there's other stuff going on that are, certainly obviously at the facility, like, and our employees and our other things that are happening, it's definitely stressful. But just kind of taking inventory of what we can be grateful for, and not only talking to God when we need something, but talking to God when we can say thank you and we can be grateful, and we can honor that faith and not just have Him in the backseat along for the ride, but kind of help him guide the steering wheel. Let him drive the car. Let Him give you directions. Even if we're the ones with our foot in the pedal and on the brake, let Him kind of, be your compass, be your Siri. Tell us, say, turn left now, and kind of pray for that direction. So that's all I really got for you guys. Only had one verse, so hope that was all right. And we'll kind of stick around. Same thing we've done in the past, where we'll stick around, kind of have a more focused discussion. Sorry, it's a little bit loud on my end on this side of things. Hopefully, it's not too chaos with the microphone. It shouldn't be bad. But anybody got any comments or concerns? Stuff that Mike said, stuff that challenges of things you might not be able to accomplish that Mike challenged you to? Can we help you be creative in any ways? That's kind of one thing I think we can do better as coaches too, is we kind of just assume that people either have this stuff or they don't. And I think we can be creative and help you guys kind of figure this out. Nothing? Nobody? Who's got like a cool story for us outside of just, that doesn't even have to be baseball related. Tiger, are you able to turn your video and your chat on? I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you can't, it's okay. Don't feel bad. All right, no worries. Anybody else? All right, well, I guess we'll call it a day for today, and we'll see you guys on Monday. Have a good weekend. I'll post all the links. I'll post Kyle's workout PDF form. That'll go on the link on our website. I'll post his nutrition presentation, so you guys will have access to that. And then I'll also post Mike Reinold's link for the arm care stuff, so you guys will have access to that. So appreciate you guys participating. Thanks for all the great questions. And we'll see you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend.